Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and I love good conversation on the chairlift, as long as you don't feel compelled to tell me how cool you are. Today, we're talking about the Standard 2026, a board that is very forgiving, very versatile, has really good float and powder for a directional twin, thanks to the setback inserts, has very solid grip, and is an excellent beginner to intermediate board or advanced to expert board for those who want to chill and have an easy board to ride all day in all conditions. And while it hasn't changed much over the years, it did get a stiffer flex this year, and that's why I'm redoing it. So I rode this in a wide variety of conditions, everything from groomers to soft uneven snow to thick, wet, uneven powder on top of hard snow to a good bit of powder and a little bit of everything in between. And in the past, I've ridden this extensively and tested it in a wide variety of conditions, everything from late spring snow all the way to some pretty deep midwinter snow. And I compared it against the Standard Extreme, which used to be the Standard on ink, which also has a stiffer flex as well. The All-In and the All-In Extreme, all of them have a stiffer flex for 2026. And of course, I put my Union Force and Nitro Team TLS on these boards to test. And just so you know, this is an honest, objective review from an average rider's perspective for you, the consumer, and I can do that thanks to reader support like you and our sponsor, Blower Board Shop, who's been selling snowboards forever. They have a large online presence now that competes very well against other big stores in terms of shipping, customer support, and of course, price. So if you like honest, objective reviews and what we review appeals to you, it's greatly appreciated if you buy through our links to Blower Board Shop. Thanks. When it comes to sizing, this 56 is the best size for my weight at about 185 to 195 pounds. It's a very good length to match my 5'10" frame, but it feels a little slow and a little hard to turn in certain conditions for my size 9 boots. If you're a 10 or a 10.5, this would be a great fit for you. As it stands for me, it's fine when conditions are clean, but as they get uneven, it becomes a little slow, a little harder to turn for me. Now, when it comes to shape, this is a directional twin. The nose and the tail are the same length. The side cut is twin. The stance is centered. But as you can see, there is much more surface area in this nose versus the tail. So when the side cut ends and the nose and tail begin, they're exactly the same width. But as you get out to the tip and tail, this stays wider and gives you better float. And this gets much narrower and acts more like a tapered directional board. So you get the best of both worlds. You get a board that feels almost like a true twin on groomers and a board that feels like a tapered directional board in powder. So on reference stance, it's centered on side cut and centered on board. But if you have full-size discs and you hit these setback inserts, you can get 2.25 inches back from center of board at a 21.5 inch stance width. So this board has a lot of versatility. That setback is best for powder, but if you're in a more directional mood, it can work on groomers as well. Then you factor in the camber here, which is very mellow. I can barely get my fingers underneath this to lift it up. I have to put my thumb back here to hold it to get purchase, where in comparison to the Standard Extreme, I can just lift up because it has a lot more camber here while still having a decent amount of early rise before the nose and tail. I personally prefer this camber profile a lot more because it's still somewhat forgiving but has more pop and a much better carving experience. But this Standard butters easier and floats better and is much more forgiving while still being pretty stable one footing and flat basing. But I will say I wish it had the All-Ins camber profile that goes a little bit further past the inserts, has a little bit less early rise in the nose and tail, but still is very forgiving, very easy to ride. And with all this rocker and so little camber, you really don't feel like you have a lot of board on snow. Now, when it comes to edge hold, there is a mellow indention at the waist at each point here, and it has very competent grip in hard snow. It's not quite as grippy as the front foot is with the all-in and all-in extreme. The back is the same as the standard and the standard extreme, but it's very good. And while it can still let go in icy snow if you really commit to a harder turn, overall, most people will be more than happy with this. And I often recommend this to people who see hard to icy snow often, but want to be prepared for powder. This is a great option. Let's talk standard flex for 2026. It's stiffened up a little bit, and you can really feel it. It's not the super soft flexi board that it used to be. It feels definitely more stiffer all mountain. The tail's pretty stiff. The nose is about the same flex, and it's a pretty consistent flex throughout the board. Feels like a twin flex. And while this isn't the poppiest board, it feels like it's got a little more pop just because of that stiffer flex. It's less easy to butter than the old standard, but still pretty easy to butter overall in the nose and the tail, especially with all that rocker in the nose and tail, allowing you a little extra leverage to start. The pop isn't quite there in comparison to the standard extreme for 2026, which is a good bit stiffer from the standard on ink, but this is a lot easier to butter and play around with. If you want to ride switch, this is almost like a true twin. It's going to be hard to really feel a difference for most. Some might feel the extra weight in the nose versus the tail when spinning and buttering, but when you're engaged on side cut, turning edge to edge, and you flip it around and ride switch, it does a great job. This is a good board if you're the right size boot for pipe. For me, it isn't, but I'm a size 9, so I don't have that control. But if you're a 10.5, this is an excellent pipe board. This is a very good board for small to medium kickers. It just doesn't have that pop out of the jump like the standard extreme does. And you can jib with this okay. This new stiffer flex isn't as jib friendly as the past, but it's still doable. And when it comes to uneven snow, it's a lot better. It still can buck and bounce, but it's pretty predictable. And it was one of the easiest boards I've ridden recently to manage in uneven snow for this kind of flex. I just felt like I understood what it was going to do before it would happen. And I think the lack of pop in comparison to some other Yes boards and other competitors to this helped it quiet down a little quicker after it bounced through soft, uneven snow. Hard, uneven snow, this will do really well. When it comes to turn initiation, this turns pretty quick for the width underfoot. For my size 9 boots, I thought it would turn much slower. And this is the kind of board you want to get if you're somebody who is a mid-wide, like 10, 10.5, and you've always tried to fit yourself into normal width boards because you hate the way wides and mid-wides turn. This is your board because it won't have that slow, dull feeling edge to edge. It turns pretty quick if you're the right size boot. And when you get this on edge, this has a side cut that seems to have an easier transition in the nose and tail, so it doesn't feel super turny and it can go straight pretty well. But as you flex the board more and engage more of the inside parts of the side cut, you have this indentation and you get a more tighter turning ride. So it can do both really well. You can make down the line, longer drawn out S turns really well with this board, but also across the groomer carve and circle carve really well. The only thing is you just don't get a lot of spring out of the board like you do with the standard extreme. And even the all-in has more spring out of the turn than this because you just don't get a lot of camber, and that really helps the other boards pop and spring out of a turn easier. And this flex, while it's a little bit stiffer, it just still isn't a bomber board, but you can make the occasional straight line. The nose and tail will just clown shoe a little bit. When it comes to base glide, you have a clear base, and with clear PTEX and a good gun, you can keep this pretty for a long time. The base glide's a little bit above medium, a little below that upper tier, but it's very good overall for this price point. And if you keep this well waxed, it's gonna keep its speed pretty well. The lows aren't that bad either for a centered base. But when it comes to POW float, this rides really well. Even if you're centered and you like to ride switch almost as much as you do regular, it'll do a pretty good job. But where it really shines is when you set it all the way back. This tail with less surface area than the nose sinks easier. This nose with more surface area than the tail floats easier. And on a same day powder test against the Standard Extreme, the All-In, and the All-In Extreme, this was my favorite. The All-In Extreme floats very well too. That technically is the best floater of the bunch because it's much more set back and directional. The nose is much longer than the tail. There's a good bit of taper, where this really has kind of like more of an emulated taper. But what I loved about this is it was so easy to lean back into the tail and flex the board up without giving yourself a lot of rear leg burn. I just think this is a great powder board. So if you see more powder than you do groomers, and you like a directional twin that you want to set back, this is a great choice. And overall, I like this standard. I find it very easy to recommend to beginner intermediates who want a board that can do just a little bit of everything in all conditions, and they often see some hard snow on occasion. And I wish this had just a little more camber, because the Standard Extreme and the previous model, the Standard on Ink, were not that unforgiving. So there you have it.